Is it really possible to make big LS power with just cams, springs, and boost? Sure, but there are a few tricks, and I'm going to show them to you. In this video, I'm going to show you how to improve the power output of an LS with cam, springs, and boost. You know, the normal recipe. Plus, I'm going to cover a couple of things that a lot of guys don't think about, especially first-timers, because they don't know about it. Now, if you go to the wrecking yard and grab an LS, doesn't matter whether it's a 4.8, 5.3, or 6.0, they all work well under boost. Make sure to get the stock exhaust manifolds. I mean, turbo manifolds. They work great. We've been using them a lot. We use them all the time, and they work very well. All you have to do with the stock exhaust manifolds, turn them around and build a Y pipe. Now, here's an important point. When you're doing the Y pipe, don't get caught up in Y pipe size. Do I run divided or undivided? How big should it be? How long should it be? Forget about all that. What you need to worry about is the 95% rule. Get all of the exhaust to the turbo. Get the Y pipe, merge them together, mount a T4 turbo flange. That's all you have to do. Everything else is just nitpicking. So get that done. Don't let it stop you from getting it done. The next thing is fuel. Well, doing the exhaust is easy. Mounting the turbo is easy. Selecting a turbo is even fairly easy. But make sure you have enough fuel to supply the new power needs of your combination. Here's what I mean. Stock injectors won't work. They were designed to flow a certain amount of fuel for a naturally aspirated 4.8 or 5.3 or 6.0. They're not going to work under boost. Get an injector that's sized right for the amount of power that you need to make. The 80s are very common. A lot of snake eater stuff. They have 1,000 cc's, 1,500, 2,000 cc's. The sky's the limit. Make sure you have enough fuel going to the motor for the power you're going to make. And that includes the fuel pump. Injectors are great, but if they don't get a supply of fuel from the fuel pump, it's not going to work. The next thing I always like to talk about is ring gap. Now, a lot of guys will go to the wrecking yard, take the motor out, and just run boost on it. And that's worked for a lot of guys. Here's my problem with it. You don't know what the ring gap is until it's too late. And there's no correlation, because I get this question all the time, there's no correlation between the mileage of the motor and the ring gap. You'd think that there would be, and there should be, but there isn't. I've taken motors apart that have 200,000 miles on them that still have 16 or 17 thousandths ring gap. And in my opinion, that's too tight to run boost on, especially when you're going to turn it up. And trust me, if you go out and say, I'm going to run 10 pounds, you're always going to turn it up. So I like to spend the extra day doing ring gap. If I'm putting the motor in over the long haul and I'm going to go race a whole season or 2 seasons or 10 seasons or whatever it is, in the long run, the one extra day that it took to do the ring gap and make sure you know what it is and adjust it if necessary, I like to run between 28 and 30 thousandths. That way you can run whatever amount of boost you want and you won't have any problems with the rings touching and snapping a ring line. Good insurance, take the extra day, do the ring gap. The next thing is fuel, and not injectors or pump, but the type of fuel that you use. Now, if you run pump gas, and a lot of guys do that successfully, they run them under boost on pump gas, you have to really run low timing values. So the amount of power that you get at, let's say if you want to run 10 pounds, you have to run a low timing level on pump gas. The problem is you just don't make as much power that way. Now it's safe and it runs around, and it's going to be a lot better than it was NA, but it's just not going to make as much power as if you had the right kind of fuel in there. And when we're running this stuff, we always run it on E85 for 2 reasons. It's cheap. It was like $2 a gallon, and if you've ever priced race fuel, you know how much less that is than race fuel. And also it has the octane that we need, and it has a cooling effect. So it adds power, it has the octane, and it's cheap. So there's nothing better than that. The one downside to E85, it is corrosive, so you got to make sure that your fuel lines and pump and all that stuff are compatible with E85. So I hope I've covered a lot of things. Now we're going to get into the turbo selection, intercooling, and that kind of stuff. Let's make some boost. When it comes time to choose boost for your LS, obviously you're going to pick a turbo that needs to be sized for your intended power level. Now everybody wants a 1,500 horsepower giant size single turbo or 2 monster twin turbos, but the reality is a lot of guys are just not trying to make that kind of power. And if you're going for the, mid 4-digit or high 4-digit power levels, you're probably not watching this video for information on how to do that. But for the average guy, what you need to think about is how much power do I really want? If this is a daily driver and you're looking for, 500 or 600 at the tire, then one of these inexpensive, cheap, like eBay GT45 clones works pretty well. It's really inexpensive to buy, and if you drive it around for a year and something happens to it, you just go get another one. I mean, ours was $163 the last time we tested it, so they work well at that kind of power level. Unfortunately, turbos aren't infinite. There's not an infinite amount of boost or airflow that they'll supply. The turbo has to be sized for your power needs. So like for our test, we knew we were going to run the boost up. We also knew that we were going to put a cam in our 4.8 liter and try to make decent power. So we installed this Gen 2 7875 from VS Racing. Now this turbo was capable of supplying, I'm sure, over 1,000 horsepower, which was farther than we were going to go in this test. But it's nice to have that kind of reserve left just in case you want them. Because as I said, we all promised, I'm only going to run 10 pounds. Really, that's it. And then it's 12, and then it's 14, and then it's 20. And pretty soon, it's just all of it. So whatever the turbo will do, you're trying to do it as long as the thing holds together. So get a turbo that's sized for the power level that you need, plus a little in reserve when you think you're going to go up in boost, because we're all going to go up in boost. Here's some quick advice on intercooling. Now, there's a big debate on which one's better, air to water, air to air. On the dyno, we normally run this air to water intercooler that we got from ProCharger. The reason we do it is convenience more than anything. Not that it doesn't work, it works fantastic. But we have water plumb from the dyno, we can plumb it right to the intercooler. The intercooler is easy to package around all this stuff because I have to build so many different configurations of singles and twins and blowers and all kinds of stuff. So it works really well. So forget about the argument between which is better. The important thing is intercooling versus non-intercooling. Now, you can get away with no intercooler on a blow-through carbureted application. Some guys like to do it on E85. But if I'm running any kind of boost level, even if I'm running E85, I like to have an intercooler. It just helps. It's going to knock at least 100 degrees out of the charge temperature, and lower charge temperatures are always better. So if you got an air-to-air, make sure it has good flow in front of it. Make sure it's not blocking the radiator or making the car overheat. If you've got an air-to-water, make sure you're plumbing it right. A lot of guys run these at the drag strip. They run ice water in them, which is kind of the ultimate thing. Because if you can get a charge temperature that's down below ambient at like 20 pounds boost, good things are going to happen with that motor. Before we start making some noise, let's talk about two important things: cams and springs. Now, if you're going to upgrade the cam, you're definitely going to have to upgrade the spring, especially on a 4.8 or 5.3 liter truck motor, because they have the weakest, wimpiest springs you can possibly imagine. So let's talk about camshafts first. First of all, don't get wrapped up in trying to get the very best turbo cam for your application. That doesn't exist. Just get a cam. Now for 4.8, I suggest something mild, like a stage 1 cam. Now we picked this cam from Summit Racing. I'll show the specs, I'll put them up right here. It's a pretty mild cam, but it works really well. Is it the best cam? No, nothing is the best cam. Forget about that. A stage 2 will work. Any factory upgrade, an LS1, an LS6, LS2, LS9, LS7, any of those cams will work too, and there'll be a big upgrade compared to the factory stuff. They're not ideal. Any sort of cam you put up. You want to put a truck cam in it, it works great. You want to put an NA cam in it, a blower cam, whatever you want to put in. Just upgrade the cam. When you do that, make sure also to upgrade the valve springs. As you said, wimpy valve springs on the stock 4.8 and 5.3. So we stepped up to a set of dual springs from Brian Tooley Racing. There's lots of good stuff out there. The guys from BTR are awesome. That's why we like dealing with them. Cam, springs, now let's make some noise. Our turbo kit was nothing fancy, stock exhaust manifolds, which you get when you go to the wrecking yard if you get a motor. We made a Y-pipe. Jason over at JFab whipped that thing up. And ours, we actually ran 2 wastegates, although it's probably overkill. We just wanted it on the dyno. We have better control that way. There seems to be more need for that on the engine dyno than there is out on the street and the chassis dyno, but you can get away with one. There are a lot of choices for turbos for an LS. For this combination, we installed this 7875 Gen 2 turbo from VS Racing, and it works well. Certainly capable of 1,000 horsepower, so we're not pushing it very hard. It's got good back pressure readings and stuff, so it's working really well on this combination. But there are a lot of other choices. In addition to the can, you're going to want to think about, oh, should I do an intake manifold or should I do cylinder heads? Now on ours, we just ran the factory 706 heads. All we did is do the valve spring upgrade, which we'll take a look at. But we also ran the factory early truck intake. And yes, there's more power to be had with other types of intake manifolds or ported cylinder heads. But at this level, if you just stick a cam in it and run a turbo like that, that's a 1,000 horsepower turbo, you can get everything out of that turbo with the stuff that came from the wrecking yard. So why change it? For our turbo testing, we relied on a set of 1,500 snake eater injectors. We got more than enough fuel, even running E85. I mean, we got a ton of fuel. We can go way into 4-digit stuff. These are working well. In addition to running E85, we also ran this air-to-water intercooler. Now, there's a lot of different choices for this. You can run air-to-air, you can run air-to-water. If you're out on the street, they both work really well. They're both going to knock more than 100 degrees out of the charge temperature, and that's all you want. Just make sure if you're running air-to-air, get good flow to it. To get things started, we ran our 4.8 liter LR4 up on the dyno in naturally aspirated trim, just basically all stock. The only thing that this particular motor had in it, long ago we had installed forged pistons in it because we had hurt a couple of the factory pistons. So we did some forged pistons from JE, but otherwise for this test the motor was basically stock. It had a stock block, crank, rods, it had those forged pistons, stock 706 head, stock truck intake, stock throttle body. We ran it up on the dyno with long tube headers and a Holley HP management system. And the 4.8 liter produced 344 horsepower and 345 foot-pounds of torque. So what we wanted to do is demonstrate what happens when you take a stock motor like this and you add cam, springs, and boost. So that's exactly what we did. First thing we did is add the cam, and this was a Summit 8720 cam. You can see it picked up quite a bit of power, even though it was fairly mild. 600 lift, 218, 227 on a 112, but it picked up a pretty good bit of power, just NA all by itself. And the reason that I'm showing this is, even though we were going to put boost to it too, is the camshaft always dictates what's going to happen under boost. So here we have the cam upgrade, and then now we're going to add boost, and obviously this cam we also installed springs with it as well. So here's what happened when we installed our single VS Racing 7875 turbo with an air-to-water intercooler, and we had the big snake eater injector, so we had enough fuel. We were running E85 on the boosted stuff. So here's this thing. We'll start out at here it is at 9 pounds. So right off the bat, 639 horsepower and 575 foot-pounds of torque. We had a pretty conservative tune, not a lot of timing in this. There was more power to be had, certainly, if we leaned on a little bit, but we weren't looking to do that. We were just wanting to demonstrate what happens when a guy runs E85, puts boost to it, cam and springs kind of thing. So that was 9 pounds, but we did what everybody else does. We turned the boost up. So there's 14.5 pounds. Produced 746 horsepower and 693 foot-pounds of torque. You can see boost, adds all the happiness. So our final run of the day was right at about 18 pounds. Pushes over the 800 mark. 810 horsepower. Peak torque was 766. So you see, it really is pretty easy. Just get a 4.8 5360 from the wrecking yard, add a decent cam. This one was from Summit, and springs, and then boost from a decent turbo. And this VS Racing turbo worked very well.
There are others out there that do well. And remember, injectors, pump, E85, and then the boost.
Okay guys, what'd you think about our cam springs boost turbo test on the LS? Personally, I think it worked out great, and you know what? They usually do. Especially if you pay attention to the details that we cover. Now, turbo, great. Springs, great. Cam, great. But we also had enough fuel from our snake eater injectors. We also had the right kind of fuel. We were running E85. We also had an intercooler, which worked great. So when you do all of those things, you get good results. And on our 7875 turbo, we only took this thing up to a little over 800 horsepower. But I'm going to say those famous words that everybody says. There was a lot left. I'm Richard Holder, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. I'll keep testing.